Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the show that cuts through the clutter to give you the core insights on, well, what's really driving things.
Yep, think of it as your shortcut to getting up to speed.
And today, we're diving into some seriously impactful business rivalries, mostly from the tech and telecom worlds.
Exactly. We've looked at clashes from like the 70s right up to today, basically. We're trying to pull out the key strategies, the big leadership calls, the market forces that made winners and losers.
And it's not just history for history's sake. There's a really interesting battle playing out right now in Kenya.
Right, the mobile money competition between Safaricom's M-Pesa and Airtel money. It's huge over there.
Yeah, massive implications. So the idea is by looking at these, iconic global
The
fights,
breakthroughs, the mistakes, the unexpected twists.
we can get a much better handle on what's going on between M-Pesa and Airtel right now. See what lessons apply.
What can these past showdowns like PayPal versus Square or Apple versus Google tell us about Nairobi today?
So yeah, consider this a bit of a masterclass in competitive strategy, seen through these big rivalries. Now, quick disclaimer.
Always. Look, we've dug into news reports, public statements, research, but obviously we can't know every single detail. These are complex situations.
Right, what we're presenting is based on that public information. Okay, let's jump in. Back to the 70s first.
Let's do it. We start in the U.S. with AT&T, or Mobile, as everyone called it. They were just dominant, a true monopoly in telecoms for decades.
Hard to even imagine challenging them back then, right?
Totally. They controlled pretty much everything. Local, long distance, the works.
But then came MCI and their CEO, Bill McGowan. They called him the long-distance warrior. Apt name.
He saw an opening using microwave radio tech, basically beaming calls through the air, bypassing AT&T's wires.
And the size difference was just staggering. In 1980, MCI's revenue was, what, $205 million?
Yeah, compared to AT&T's $50 billion.
Yeah. Proper David and Goliath stuff.
And MCI's strategy was clever. It wasn't just the tech. McGowan slashed prices on long distance, made it way cheaper.
And he teamed up with others, right? Like
Yeah.
American Express
Exactly. Smart partnerships to get customers quickly.
and AT&T. They weren't happy, I assume.
Not at all. There were internal memos talking about cutting off MCI's air supply. Pretty ruthless.
Yikes. Shows how serious they took the threat.
But the environment was changing. The FCC, the regulator, made some key decisions in 69 and 71.
Opening the market a bit.
Precisely. Creating legal space for competitors like MCI to actually offer those cheaper calls. Regulation was key. Plus, antitrust concerns were growing about AT&T's sheer power.
That whole idea of preventing monopolies hurting consumers.
Right. And eventually, the antitrust pressure just gave too much. AT&T faced a massive lawsuit.
And they settled, leading to the breakup in '82.
Exactly. The giant was broken up into the baby bells.
Yeah.
Totally changed the U.S. telecom map.
Okay, so let's connect this to Kenya, M-Pesa, and Airtel.
Well, you see the parallels, right?
Yeah.
M-Pesa, hugely dominant like Ma Bell was.
Yeah, and facing similar questions about market power, regulatory scrutiny.
And Airtel. They're acting like MCI. The nimble rival, using lower fees, promotion,
Trying to chip away at the giant.
and importantly, regulation in Kenya, like pushing for interoperability.
Letting people send money easily between M-Pesa and Airtel.
That really helps Airtel. Just like those FCC decisions helped MCI, it opens things up.
It's a good reminder, isn't it? Even giants can be vulnerable when regulation and a smart competitor align.
Definitely. Okay, next up. Let's move from the phone lines into the living room. The home video war.
VHS versus Betamax. Classic. Late 70s, early 80s.
And this wasn't just tech specs, it was about different philosophies, really.
Right. Sony had Betamax, better picture quality. Initially, at least, they went for the premium angle.
But JVC, with VHS, focused on something else. Recording time.
That was the killer feature, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Beta tapes were like an hour long at first.
Yeah, maybe an hour. VHS gave you 2 hours, sometimes more later on. Enough for a whole movie or the big game. That mattered to people.
Big time. And then there was the strategy difference.
Huge difference. Sony kept Betamax tech pretty close, controlled it tightly.
Well, JVC.
They licensed VHS out to anyone. Panasonic, Sharp, tons of companies started making VHS players.
So suddenly, VHS players were everywhere, and they were cheaper. And the tapes, too.
Exactly. Ubiquity won. Movie studios, video rental stores. They went with a format that most people had, the one that could record a full movie.
So VHS crushed Betamax, even though Beta might have been technically better in some ways.
It's a great lesson, isn't it? Tech specs aren't everything. Accessibility, convenience, what the customer actually needs, That often wins.
You see that play out again and again, right? Like Android versus iOS.
Perfect example. Google's open approach with Android, letting lots of manufacturers use it, massive market share. Apple's closed system is premium, profitable, but smaller reach overall. Like VHS versus Beta, in a way.
And for Kenya, mobile money.
Well, M-Pesa had that amazing first mover advantage, like Beta's initial quality edge perhaps, got in fast, built a huge network.
But Airtel now is really pushing openness, right? Interoperable agents, sending money across networks easily.
That echoes the VHS strategy, doesn't it? Making it easy for everyone, focusing on accessibility.
So is there a warning there for Safaricom? Could they have a Betamax moment?
It's a risk, potentially. If you cling too tightly to a closed model, even a really good one, you might lose out to something more open, more partner-friendly, that delivers basic value better. It's about being accessible.
Interesting. Okay, let's jump forward to the 80s. Personal computers are starting to take off.
And January 1984, the Super Bowl, Apple's iconic 1984 ad.
Still gives me chills. That runner smashing the screen.
Incredible piece of marketing. And the symbolism was so clear. Apple, the runner, challenging IBM, the gray controlling big brother.
IBM was the giant back then, right? Dominating business computing, moving into PCs.
Absolutely. And Apple, led by Steve Jobs, positioned themselves perfectly as the creative rebels, the underdog.
Jobs fueled that narrative too, didn't he? Warning IBM wants it all.
He was a master storyteller. David versus Goliath. That was Apple's whole brand identity then.
And their weapon was the Macintosh. That graphical interface, the mouse. Revolutionary for its time.
Totally different from the command line stuff most people were used to.
And that ad. It cost a fortune, nearly $1 million back then. Ridley Scott directed it. Big risk.
Huge risk. Apparently, some folks at Apple weren't even sure about it. Too weird, too dark.
But Jobs pushed it through. And it worked.
Oh, yeah. Huge buzz. Massive sales spike for the Mac right after. Defined Apple's image for years.
It's funny, though, because while Apple won the marketing war.
Right. In terms of actual market share back then, IBM PCs and the clones running Microsoft software, they ended up dominating more of the market.
Still, that rivalry really shaped how we think about tech brands and vision.
Absolutely. So drawing the line to Nairobi.
Well, Safaricom now is kind of the Goliath, isn't it? Even though they started as the innovator.
True. And Airtel is trying hard to be that alternative, the plucky one with better deals, more customer-friendly maybe.
It really shows how important that narrative is. Safaricom built this amazing story of financial inclusion with M-Pesa early on.
And now Airtel's trying to craft its own story. The better value, the choice against the giant.
Leadership mindset matters too, right? Capturing people's imagination.
Definitely. And just like that 1984 ad cut through, savvy marketing and storytelling are just as crucial in the mobile money fight today. A good narrative can really move the needle.
Okay, mid-90s. The internet is exploding. New battlefield.
And the first big fight online, Microsoft versus Netscape. The browser wars. Hugely important moment.
Netscape Navigator was the browser everyone used first.
Not get much. It was the main way people got online. And its IPO in '95 was sensational. It looked like Netscape could become this new platform, maybe even making Windows less relevant.
Which must have terrified Microsoft.
Oh, absolutely. Bill Gates and the team saw Netscape as a massive threat. If everyone's living inside the browser, who cares about the underlying OS as much?
So Microsoft went on the attack.
Full scale. They developed Internet Explorer, bundled it into Windows.
And gave it away for free.
Exactly. Leveraging their Windows monopoly. That infamous quote came out later. They wanted to cut off Netscape's air supply.
Brutal. And effective, I guess.
Very effective in the short term. IE's market share shot up. Netscape's plummeted.
But it backfired, didn't it?
Yeah.
The antitrust case.
Big time. 1998, the U.S. Department of Justice and 20 states sued Microsoft. Said they illegally used their Windows monopoly to crush Netscape.
That trial revealed a lot about Microsoft's tactics.
Yeah, how they saw any competing platform as something to be squashed.
And the court found them guilty.
Guilty of monopoly abuse in 2000. They avoided being broken up on appeal, but faced years of government oversight. Huge hit to their reputation.
In Netscape.
Never really recovered, got acquired, faded away, though its code lived on in Mozilla Firefox, so its spirit kind of survived.
So the lesson is,
Yeah.
even giants can be challenged by innovators, but overreaching can bring serious consequences.
Definitely. Now, applying that to Kenya.
M-Pesa's dominance again, right? Over 90% share. That's like Windows back then.
Pretty close analogy.
Yeah.
And Airtel is like, Netscape has to be smart, innovative, find partners to compete.
And the warning for Safaricom is clear. push too hard, try to smother competition too aggressively.
And the regulators might step in, just like they did with Microsoft. We're already seeing pressure on Safaricom to open up its agent network, its APIs.
To level the playing field a bit.
Right. And for Airtel, Netscape's story is maybe inspiring. Keep pushing, because new tech trends, maybe next-gen fintech, maybe central bank digital currencies could shake things up again.
Always a possibility. Okay, let's move into the 2000s smartphones.
Ah, yes. The big one. Apple versus Google. Kicked off really with the iPhone launch in 2007.
And weren't they buddies at first? Google's CEO was on Apple's board.
Yeah, Eric Schmidt. Early iPhones had Google Maps, Google Search built in. Seemed like an alliance.
But Google had its own plans. Android?
Exactly. And open source OS they offered to phone makers. And as the iPhone took off, Android started growing rapidly too, on phones from Samsung, HTC.
So the friendship soured pretty quickly.
Totally. Became an all-out war. Closed Apple ecosystem versus open Google. App Store versus Google Play. Siri versus Google Assistant.
And Steve Jobs felt betrayed, right? Famously declared thermonuclear war on Android.
He did. He saw Android as a stolen product, basically. Apple launched huge patent lawsuits, especially against Samsung.
Meanwhile, Google just kept improving Android.
And eventually, Android won the global market share battle, especially in developing countries. Just way more Android phones out there.
But Apple kept the high end, the profits, that super loyal user base.
Right. And the competition forced both sides to innovate like crazy. Better apps, cameras, cloud stuff, mobile payments, Apple Pay, Google Wallet.
So by the mid-2010s, you had this clear smartphone duopoly.
Established. Now think about Kenya again.
First mover versus fast follower.
Exactly. Apple wasn't the first smartphone, but the iPhone redefined it. Forced Google to react with Android.
And M-Pesa was the pioneer in mobile money.
Right. Airtel came later, learned from M-Pesa, refined its approach.
Like offering easier cross-network transfers, lower fees maybe. Things M-Pesa didn't focus on initially.
Just like early Android phones had features the first iPhones lacked.
So maybe they can coexist, like Apple and Google.
It's possible. Differentiate, focus on different strengths. The key, like we saw with phones, is constant innovation. Pushing into new services, loans, savings, linking with e-commerce.
Keep adding value. Okay, but last one. Let's focus on a checkout counter.
Right. PayPal versus Square. The 2010s payment battle.
PayPal was the established giant online, thanks to eBay.
Totally dominant online. Then Square comes along, co-founded by Jack Dorsey.
With that little white square card reader you plug into your phone.
So simple, but revolutionary. Suddenly, tiny businesses, market stalls, food trucks, they could all take credit cards easily.
Game changer for them, and a threat to PayPal.
Big threat. Square was moving into the physical world where PayPal wasn't really playing. The rivalry heated up around 2012.
Wasn't there a big Starbucks deal for Square?
Yep. Huge validation, $25 million investment, Starbucks using Square tech.
And PayPal reacted.
Fast. Launched PayPal. Here, their own little triangular card reader. They use their trusted brand name. Slightly lower fees sometimes.
Basically admitting Square had found a gap they'd missed.
Pretty much. And then both just kept expanding. Square added business tools, the Cash App took off. PayPal bought companies, focused on mobile payments, e-commerce integration.
So the fight made both of them better, broadened their services.
Absolutely. Blurred the lines between them eventually.
The lesson for incumbents there seems clear.
Yeah, you've got to adapt when innovation changes how customers behave. Square proved that the low end, those small merchants, was a massive, valuable market.
And in Kenya. You could argue Airtel was doing something similar.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Targeting those more cost-conscious users, maybe smaller transactions, that M-Pesa didn't prioritize as much initially.
And customer behavior shifting in Kenya, right? People want lower fees, seamless transfers.
Definitely. They want that interoperability. And you see Safaricom responding now with M-Pesa app getting better, M-Shwari loans linking with banks.
So just like PayPal had to react to Square.
Exactly. You can't take any customer segment for granted.
Yeah.
Gotta stay agile, stay focused on the customer.
Okay, last big rivalry. Back to the U.S. telecoms, but more recent, Verizon versus AT&T.
The ongoing heavyweight match. Both born from that original Mabel breakup, actually.
By the late 2000s, they were neck and neck on subscribers.
Yeah.
Right? But different strategies.
Sort of. AT&T got that huge coup, exclusive rights to the first iPhone 2007, pulled in tons of valuable customers.
Verizon focused on the network.
Network quality, reliability. That whole "Can you hear me now" campaign was brilliant marketing for them.
And they went after AT&T's network, didn't they? With those, there's a map for that, ads.
Oh, yeah, showing Verizon's supposedly better 3G coverage
Yeah.
led to lawsuits, the whole thing, very aggressive,
But then Verizon got the iPhone 2 in 2011, leveled the playing field.
pretty much. Then the fight shifted more to network speed, who had the best 4G LTE pricing, and big strategic bets like acquisitions.
Right. Verizon went early on LTE. AT&T tried to buy T-Mobile, but got blocked.
And both dove into media. Verizon bought AOL, Yahoo, AT&T bought DirecTV, Time Warner. Big, expensive bets. With mixed results, really. Lots of debt for AT&T especially.
But customers benefited. Unlimited data came back. 5G rollout.
Yeah, the competition definitely pushed innovation and better deals for consumers. And even now, in 2025, they're still slugging it out. Huge companies, massive revenues, still very close.
So what can Safaricom and Airtel learn from these titans?
Well, it shows how two giants can battle constantly in a mature market, fighting for small gains. It highlights leadership and strategy. Verizon sticking mostly to telecom versus AT&T diversifying, perhaps too much.
Different paths, different risks.
Exactly, and it shows the power of brand. AT&T leveraged the iPhone hype. Verizon built trust on reliability. How do Safaricom and Airtel build and maintain that trust and loyalty?
And regulation again, the U.S. blocking that AT&T T-Mobile merger.
Huge impact. Just like Kenyan regulators watching Safaricom's dominance and pushing things like agent interoperability could reshape that market.
Okay, so let's try and tie all these threads together. What are the big takeaways for the Safaricom-Airtel fight?
All right, theme one, innovation versus imitation. Being first like M-Pesa is great, but fast followers like Airtel can thrive by learning, adapting, improving the model. Continuous reinvention is key.
Right. Second, leadership mindset. You need that initial vision, like M-Pesa had, building trust. But maybe you also need the financial discipline and challenger mentality Airtel seems to have. A mix is probably best.
Third, customer behavior. It always comes back to the customer. What do Kenyans want now? Seamlessness, lower fees, interoperability seem big. You ignore that shift at your peril. Loyalty isn't guaranteed. Makes sense.
Fourth, regulation. We saw it again and again. The FCC, the DOJ, Kenyan regulators.
Yeah.
They can be the referee or they can completely change the game. Huge factor.
Definitely. And finally, strategic moats versus flexibility. Safaricom has great moats, the agent network, the brand trust, huge advantages. But Airtel is showing the value of being agile, lower costs, partnerships. Maybe it's not winner take all.
Maybe it's co-evolution, both finding their space.
Could be. The market might be big enough, or they might push each other to specialize in different ways.
It's amazing how these stories come. Mambell, VHS, Apple, Microsoft, PayPal, Verizon, echo what's happening today in Nairobi.
It really shows these fundamental patterns of competition, innovation, market disruption. They just keep playing out.
The Safaricom-Airtel battle is just the latest chapter in that big story.
And it highlights how connected things are. Decisions made globally impact local markets, and local innovations can sometimes ripple outwards, too.
So for you listening, maybe think about which historical pattern feels most relevant to Kenya's mobile money future.
Yeah, which rivalry seems like the best predictor? Or what completely new twist, what new innovation could come along and just rewrite the whole script?
Always something to think about. Okay, just our final reminder.
Right. This analysis is based on public info news, research, company statements. It's our synthesis. We don't have any inside scoop.
We've tried to discuss all the companies respectfully based on those public sources. Any drama was just to illustrate the points.
Thanks.